A week after the San Diego letter was sent, Harris received the first of 3 donations to her campaign for the U.S. Senate from Heather Podesta, the powerful Washington lobbyist whose firm, then called the Podesta Group, had worked for Herbalife since 2013. Harris did not pursue an investigation, even as the Federal Trade Commission proceeded with an investigation of its own, which had been opened the previous March and which suggested that sufficient grounds for such scrutiny did exist. In fact, the San Diego letter had meticulously laid out those grounds, pointing out that Herbalife presented itself to the public as a lawful enterprise, but that it could nevertheless be engaged in less obvious conduct that potentially harmed both Herbalife distributors and Herbalife customers. Allegations of such conduct, by 2015, had become commonplace in media reports. Harris never gave a reason for declining to investigate Herbalife, but the decision stands in contrast to her oft-expressed promise to fight for ordinary Americans for whom the 21st century economy seems to hold little promise. Those are the very same Americans, critics say, that Herbalife recruited and exploited. "It's disgusting," says Julie Contreras, a Chicago-based activist whose Afuera con Herbalife campaign sharply criticized the company for preying on Latino communities. Contreras says that her Spanish-language nickname for Harris is Kamala, a play on Kamala that translates to "how bad." Kamala Harris did a huge injustice in declining to investigate the Los Angeles-based company, Contreras says. Harris's presidential campaign said that it was not accurate to see in her treatment of Herbalife a hesitation about aggressively pursuing corporations. Harris has a long record of going after bad corporate actors, engaging in fraudulent behavior and delivering results for people who have been taken advantage of, said campaign spokesman Ian Sams. He noted that as California's Attorney General, Harris got $20 billion for California homeowners after taking on mortgage fraud by the big banks, secured a $1 billion judgment against for-profit Corinthian colleges for scamming students, and put Ponzi and pyramid schemers in prison. Herbalife attracted scrutiny almost from the start. In 1986, the state of California imposed a consent decree on Herbalife that said the company could not make false or misleading representations about how much money distributors could expect to make. The company also had to stop making allegedly false or exaggerated claims about its products. But despite Johnson's efforts to add corporate sheen, critics maintained that Herbalife's profits came not from sales of its weight loss products, but in the aggressive recruitment of new members, each of whom was expected to buy large amounts of inventory from the company. The new recruits quickly realized, according to Herbalife's detractors, that the inventory of pills and powders itself was largely worthless and that the only way to make money was to attract new recruits. Herbalife has long denied such accusations, portraying itself as a company that provides access to wealth to people who, for one reason or another, are unable to find success in traditional employment. The company declined to speak on the record for this story. Harris remained silent. That January, activists met with members of her office. The concerns were clearly articulated to her staff, says Brent Wilkes, who at the time was executive director of the League of United Latin American Citizens, one of the groups asking Harris to investigate Herbalife. "They heard us, asked interesting questions," Wilkes recalls. Wilkes said that he was hopeful that Harris would come around, but the activism failed to make a sufficient impact on Harris. The activists asking Harris to investigate Herbalife did not seem to know that she had a personal connection to the law firm representing the corporation. "That's news to me," Wilkes said when told by Newspulse News about Emhoff's law firm. The letter to Harris from Judith Fiorentini, the supervising deputy attorney general in the San Diego office, was sent on March 3, 2015. It was signed by 2 other deputy attorneys general, Sana Singer and Jinsu Kota, who like Fiorentini were in the Consumer Law Department of the Attorney General's office. Their memo asked for a delegation of investigative authority, which was to include the authority to issue and enforce investigative subpoenas. Fiorentini wrote that while Herbalife has outwardly complied with the 1986 injunction, we believe that it may be directing or enabling the acts of its distributors in ways that violate that order and/or consumer laws in general. She explained that there was reason to believe that Herbalife was empowering its distributors to make false claims about the benefits of becoming a Herbalife distributor. Herbalife can be liable for consumer violations by its distributors to the extent Herbalife enabled the distributors' actions, Fiorentini wrote. The letter went on to cite precedent for conducting such a probe, and noted that a preliminary investigation had already taken place. That investigation revealed that Herbalife, at least in publicly available documents, has carefully drawn its corporate policies and conducted itself in a manner that is outwardly consistent with the 1986 injunction. Fiorentini thought it was nevertheless necessary to delve behind what is publicly available to determine if Herbalife is directing or enabling its distributors to act illegally. Fiorentini requested 2 full-time attorneys, 3 or 4 legal assistants, and, potentially, officers to conduct undercover operations. The letter ended with the pros and cons of such an investigation. Fiorentini was frank about the energy and resources required while also anticipating a rigorous legal defense from the company. At the same time, she said that an investigation would send the message that this office takes continued monitoring and enforcement of its existing judgments very seriously. In addition, it will ensure that Herbalife is held accountable for the acts of its distributors. The contents of the memorandum, or its existence, have not been published before. But it suggests that Harris was made directly aware of the dangers Herbalife may have posed to the people of California. No investigation was opened into Herbalife in response to the memorandum from Fiorentini, who did not respond to repeated requests for comment from NewsPulse News. Nor has Harris publicly said why she chose not to investigate Herbalife, a step that would necessarily lead to prosecution. A person familiar with deliberations at the Attorney General's office at the time disputes suggestions of inaction by Harris. The person who requested anonymity in order to speak frankly said that the California Attorney General's office did help the FTC with its investigation, namely through its corporate fraud division. And the person said that Harris was hesitant to join a fight between billionaires. In response to Ackman's $1 billion Herbalife short, investor Carl Icahn bet heavily on the company, and the two men began to attack each other sharply on television. Podesta, the Herbalife lobbyist, donated $1,000 to Harris's campaign for the U.S. Senate on March 31, 2015, at the end of the same month that had seen the arrival of the letter from the San Diego office, asking for an Herbalife investigation. She donated $4,400 to Harris's Senate campaign the following year. Podesta had made smaller donations, of $100 and $500, to Harris in 2010 and 2014, respectively. She did not respond to requests for comment. Harris moved on from her duties as a prosecutor in 2016 when, on the same day that Trump became president, she was elected to serve as California's junior U.S. Senator. She was sworn in the following January and exactly 2 years later, announced that she was running to oust Trump from the Oval Office. The FTC won a $200 million settlement from Herbalife in July 2016. Related to that settlement was one with Madigan, the Illinois Attorney General, for $3 million. California, which often leads the nation in consumer and environmental regulations, remained on the sidelines. Since then, however, she has faced questions about whether her progressivism is genuine or only a matter of political expediency. She has yet to explain why she declined to pursue a corporation accused of exploiting her Latino constituents. Harris was replaced as California's Attorney General by Xavier Becerra, who had formerly represented Los Angeles in the U.S. House of Representatives. Becerra has formerly received significant political donations from Herbalife's Political Action Group. His office would not say how, if at all, this complicated considerations about opening an investigation into Herbalife. The Attorney General's press office declined to comment in response to repeated calls and emails from NewsPulse News. Contreras, the Chicago activist, has watched the Harris presidential campaign with skepticism. For her, the decision to go easy on Herbalife is indicative of where Harris's sympathies lie, and it is not with the downtrodden. Contreras has a simple message for the presidential candidate, Kamala Harris: shame on you.